Live stream on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
All right, Giants lose 8-5 down in the desert. It's John Dickinson, Sports Phone KNBR, the post-Giants game edition. 808 KNBR is the number. Let's react to this one, and goodness, was it ugly for the Giants. Mike Yastrzemski, he made it look a little bit better, at least cosmetically, with the 3-run homer in the 8th inning. The Giants did get the Diamondbacks closer in the game in the 9th, but it all ends on Michael Conforto taking a called third. Kyle Harrison, I thought, pitched pretty well in this one, but a lot of balls off of Giants fielders' gloves in the 3rd inning. A 3-run 3rd inning. Diamondbacks would take a 4-1 lead going to the 5th. Giants scratched across a run in the 5th inning. It was 4-2 to the 7th, and then Luke Jackson came in, and Luke Jackson completely imploded. Couldn't get through the 7th. A lot of hanging sliders. He gives up 4, and the 4-2 game where the Giants felt like maybe they were in position to steal it, and what could have been on that Yastrzemski homer had the Giants been able to keep Arizona on 4 going into that 8th inning. We will never know. Because Luke Jackson came in, and his ERA is now over 6 on the season. He has really struggled, gives up the 4, and the Giants end up losing this one. 8-5 is the final as Harrison takes the loss. Ginkel in relief gets the win for Arizona as he came on in relief after Walston made the start. So where do you put the blame in this one? Is it the shabby defense? And look, the defense has been, I think, a part of the story in these first couple of games. Not only the plays that the Giants haven't quite been able to make, and there were, 4 different balls, hits off the glove of Giant fielders in this game that really led to the 3rd inning where the Giants got behind the 8 ball there and got behind 3-0 after the first third of this ball game. And or is it the hitting, which continues to be an issue for San Francisco? The Giants got the leadoff hitter on in each of the first 5 innings. Each of the first 5 innings, the Giants got the leadoff hitter on 2 runs to show for it. They were 1 for 9 with runners in scoring position before Yastrzemski hit the 3-run homer, and just a lot of bad at-bats in situations where the Giants were getting ahead in the count. A lot of 3-ball counts, and the Giants just unable to come through. Let's be honest, the offense right now looks like it did the first 6 weeks of the season after the hot streak that lasted there and the 10-2 stretch over a couple of weeks. And I know injuries are a part of this thing, and it set the whole thing back in a bad way. But the offense, minus the 3-run homer after the game was basically decided, continues to be an issue. And the Giants, now for a week, have really struggled offensively. They had the 8-run game in the win on Memorial Day Monday against the Phillies. And coming into this game tonight, the Giants had scored just 14 runs in the last 6 games, going back to the 1-0 win a week ago tonight at Oracle Park when they beat the Phillies in that bullpen game to cap the 10 out of 12 stretch to get to 2 games over 500. That is all gone. All of the vibes from that are gone. 6 in a row in the loss column. They've dropped 7 consecutive games at Chase Field. And the offense, as I mentioned, has really been going in the wrong direction. Now 29-33 on the season. Defense let Harrison down. Bottom line, couple of tough at-bats against him by Blaze Alexander, who continues to be somebody that the Giants cannot get out over the course of the first couple of games of this series. And the Giants just did not take advantage of some of the count leverage that they had. 14 3-ball counts in the 7th inning, and the Giants just weren't getting it done. Luke Jackson comes in, and he's just had an awful season. From game number 1 when he came in with the lead on opening day, and that game, which the Giants were up down in San Diego, turned into an L right there. And then he got hurt in that moment, came back, basically was put to the back end of the Giants' bullpen depth chart and then found his way in that game that the Giants ended up losing in part because of the Luciano error in Pittsburgh before they won the last couple of games of that series against the Pirates and the first couple of games of the series against the Mets before the bullpen blew up again. So he had a bad start, decent stretch in a lot of low-leverage situations, but for the most part, Luke Jackson has struggled. And, again, you can put it on the offense, you can put it on the shabby defense, you can put it on Luke Jackson letting the game get completely out of hand before Mike Yastrzemski hit the 3-run poke in the 8th inning. But either way you add it all up, this Giants team is suddenly in a very, very bad way at 29-33 and back down to 4th in the National League West. That's the glass is empty point of view. I will give quickly the glass is half full point of view. And look, we're going to do this all year long. Giants are only 1.5 out of that final wild card. They're only 2 out of the second wild card because the National League stinks. The National League is as mediocre as I can remember it, at least through the first third of the season. And with the extra wild card, you can be a mid to mediocre or worse. Because that's the other question I have at 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line is open. You can give me a call or shoot me a text at that same number. Always appreciate everybody on YouTube and Twitch as well. Hello to those of you choosing to watch the program tonight. But the season has gone basically 8 weeks, and the Giants have looked like a really bad baseball team for 6 of those 8 weeks. So which one is it? Because I think we're getting what, and you can factor in injuries, and you can say, hey, that's where this thing is tipped back in the wrong direction for the Giants, and they had some injuries early, and players that they were counting on to be a part of this thing are gone in some cases for the entire season. You can look at it any way you choose to, but the season is 8 weeks old, and the Giants have been a good team for 2 weeks, and they've been a bad team for 6 weeks. So, you add it up, and they were hot enough to where it's 4 under, but they've given back everything that they built and basically have gone all the way back to the second game of the Colorado series, which is 2 games off of their low point of the season. So all of the good vibes, all of the maybe this team is figuring something out, all of the it looks different in the young guys, none of it matters, and they've almost completely wiped it all away now with this 6-game losing streak to dip to 29-33. And I've said this a lot. I said it against the Pirates. I said it against the Mets. I said it even early in the season against the Reds when they were at Oracle Park, and I said it going into this Diamondback series. All of these teams, like, you can say, hey, the Giants have really struggled against good teams, and they have in a major way. 2-5 in games against the Phillies, 1-5 in games against the Dodgers, the sweep to the Yankees. We've dissected all of that last night. But the reality is when you play the other mediocre teams like the Padres or the Cubs or the Diamondbacks or the Pirates or the Mets or the Reds, those teams are thinking they're getting wins against you. So it's not, hey, this Giants team's hot, let's play all these other mediocre teams, and now the Giants are going to feast. That's typically not how it works out because the Diamondbacks, who were really struggling and now have won 4 in a row, are thinking, we're better than the Giants. And so are the Pirates and so are the Mets, even though the Giants proved in 4 series against those 2 teams that they had been the better team, taking 2 of 3 twice against both of those teams. So 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Got a couple of lines open, but a lot of people that want to talk, so let's get it rolling here with Don in San Francisco on the Sports Leader. Hey, Don.
What's up?
What's going on tonight, my man?
Oh, my goodness. Did we have to go on through the same old when we start doing good? We start that loss with Philadelphia. Oh, man. Now we're going back to the day one, going back to, I don't know what to say. It's just like we're going back to the streak again. we were starting the winning streak. Now I don't know what the hell's happening.
Well, they're not hitting.
The Yankees.
They're not hitting. That's one thing that's not happening. They're not playing great defense. That's one thing that's not happening. And they were low energy, I thought, early in this game. And we're gonna play what Bob Melvin had to say in his post-game media availability down in the desert. But it's been kind of an all systems fail. And then when they have had the leads, the bullpen blows the lead. Or your ace in Logan Webb doesn't pitch like an ace early, and you get behind the Yankees, and you come back and you make a game of it, and then teams add on. It's basically been everything. Teams are adding on against the Giants. They're coming back against their pen. They're beating the ace. The Giants aren't hitting. Again, we can talk about all the different reasons for it, and this team losing a couple of key players at an inopportune time when it looked like maybe things were flipping in the other direction. But the bottom line is it's just not good baseball right now, and it's dipped the Giants from what looked like a moment of potential back down to them looking like a team that's going to win somewhere in the 70s. The reality, though, is, and the good news, Don, they might win 3 of the next 4 and be 2 under 500 and only a game out or a half game out of the second wild card. But here's my question for Giants fans. Here's my question. Do you really want to live that life the next 3 months? Do you really want to live the 6 under to 2 under, and they're in it, but it's mediocre, but the NL stinks? So it's a 3 out of 4, and all of a sudden you're feeling like, do you really want to live all summer between 2 over and 6 under, but 2 to 3 games out, and believing that, one hot streak that probably isn't necessarily coming, at least without a cold streak to offset it, can get you in the playoffs, and then anything can happen? Of course, anything can happen. Because you've seen it, Don. You've seen it with Arizona. You've seen it with San Diego, a couple of mediocre teams that made runs the last couple of years. But I just want to ask Giants fans tonight, are you really into this existence? Because this is not 2010 or 2012 or 2014. It's not. This team does not have the ceiling of those teams. So I don't want to hear anybody's like, well, just get in and anything can happen. And nobody thought the 2010 team won 90 freaking games. Okay? 2012 team won 96 games or 95 games. Like 2014 won 88 games. Like, you're not doing that at 81, 83, 84 wins. Not given the talent that we've seen this team have. I got on a rant there, Don. I'll let you finish your point.
Yeah, you're right about something, but I'm not blaming the Bob Melvin, the team. I know we have injuries on the team, but I just have to hope they can just pull out of it,
Yeah, that's all you can do. All you can do. No, I'm not putting it on Bob Melvin either. Thanks for the call tonight, Don. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. From Don, we go to Arthur in Los Angeles here on the Sports Leader. Arthur, that was uninspiring tonight. Uninspiring and sloppy tonight.
It sure was, John. And thanks for taking my call. I missed the middle innings. I caught the beginning and the ending of the game, and I may miss tomorrow's game. I may be out shopping. But this game was decided in the first inning. Tyro Estrada, he has to count 3-1. It's his first game back in 3 days. The previous batter walked, so that means the pitcher has a hard time throwing strikes, and he swings at 2 pitches out of the strike zone. Both pitches could have been ball 4. Don't you think that's where probably the game was decided? Not many sports games are decided in the first inning or first quarter or first period. That's probably where it was probably decided. What you think?
Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily decided, Arthur, in the first inning, but it set the tone for a lot of bad at bats when the Giants had favorable counts in this one. And yeah, Ramos draws the leadoff walk. Estrada strikes out, then Bailey hits into the double play there. Second inning, Chapman leads off, and then Conforto walks. And the at bat there, the 2 at bats really, it was Soler popping out with 2 on and nobody out. And then Flores walks in the second inning. So it wasn't just the first inning, but the second inning, the Giants have the bases loaded. And then I thought Casey Schmidt's at bat, striking out on the high fastball, was another one of those key at bats. And then Matos flied out to end that inning. And then you get to the third inning, and again, it's a Ramos gets hit by the pitch, Estrada with the pop out, and then Bailey bounced into a 6-4-3 to end that inning. So a couple of double plays there with runners on from Bailey, but the 2 Estrada at bats, I'm with you, and the Soler and Casey Schmidt at bats in the second inning, I think, are right up there. And then Arizona, once they get the lead, we've seen it. It's just that uphill climb. The Giants have had a lot of comebacks this year, but again, it's just no way to live. It's no way to live, Arthur. You're not going to win a lot of games if you're playing from 4-0 down or 3-0 down on a regular basis.
Yes. He could have took a couple of pitches right there because he probably don't have his Estrada, that he don't have his swing back. Yeah. But, yeah, I'll let the previous caller say, I'm a big Bob Melvin fan. I'm not going to put this on him. No.
He didn't put the team together. That's the reality, Arthur. Bob Melvin didn't put the team together. And look, Bob Melvin was not happy tonight. He was not happy with the optics and the energy level and the sloppiness tonight. We'll play that for you coming up here on Sports Phone KNBR, the post-Giants game edition. Arthur, have a great night down in Southern California. Be safe, and we'll talk again soon.
Sure. Well, one last question. John,
sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, go for it, Arthur. One more thing.
I'll take this off the air. Who you have in the finals, Dallas or Boston?
Oh, man. That's a great – Arthur, I want to pick Boston, but I kind of think Dallas. Like, Dallas, to me, it comes down to – and it comes down to, can Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum dominate against some inferior wings? Like, those two should dominate the Dallas wings. It comes down to those two versus the Dallas wings and Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving against some pretty good defense of the Boston guards. But I'll tell you, where I think this thing could get dicey for the Celtics, even though they're the more talented team and they've been the better team all season long, they're extremely three-point dependent, and the Mavs are more clutch. The Mavs know what they want to do at the end of the game with Luka and Kyrie, and they've got 2 guys who own crunch time. And the big knock on the Celtics over the last few years here with Tatum and Brown has been crunch time and the fact that they're a little bit too three-point heavy. So I think it's a fascinating matchup. I think you could also make a case that the best 2 players on the court a lot of the time, or at least on paper, project to be Luka and Kyrie. And typically if one team has the 1 and the 2 players in a series, if it plays out that way, that team wins. So I think it's a fascinating series. I appreciate you asking for my thoughts here tonight amid all the Giants conversation. Appreciate it, Arthur. Arthur's line open at 808 KNBR, the number here. Maybe I'll give an official prediction before we get out of here on a Tuesday night. But I think it's a great matchup. The Celtics having the home court. Kyrie going back to Boston. I mean, I think it sets up to be a terrific series. But areas in which the Celtics have been vulnerable, I think Dallas has the potential to exploit in this series, which gives them a chance. Bruce in San Jose, back to the Giants conversation here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Bruce.
Yeah, hey, JD, good evening. Thanks for taking the call, and thanks for the crew behind the scenes. So it's been very frustrating, right? Like false hope. The Phillies series, gave me some optimism, but really was false because earlier in the year, right, I think the record is now what the record is. And I agree with callers previously. It's not on Bob Melvin. I think he's going to be already is a great manager. I used to be a Farhan, not apologist, but I mean, the players got to play and the players got to stay healthy. And the big free agents, they may not want to come here. That's not necessarily Farhan's fault at all, right? They're going to pay people. But now he's had enough years in the minor league system. Like, where's Bednard? Where's Bishop? Where's all the other players? The players that are playing now may have been Bobby Evans guys or, Sabians. I think Patrick Bailey, probably who I love, I think most Giants fans love. I mean, that's really the only named prospect. And I guess I hate to say it. I don't know. I don't have much confidence in Kyle Harrison. I know he's a young guy, so I don't know. I'd like to hear your reaction.
I'm left tonight feeling like Kyle Harrison's the least of the issues among everything else that we watched here. But you're right. Ramos to Matos to even Doval. I mean, all of those guys are prior regime guys that weren't exactly panning out and now maybe are panning out. Although I think with more time at the big league level, I mean, Luis Matos, the league has adjusted to him, and now he's got to be able to adjust back after the Player of the Week and all of that. I mean, Matos was somebody that I think, there was a reason. It was great that he came up and was hot, and everybody loved the kids, and they gave the Giants a bunch of energy that they needed at a key point in the early part of this season. But the reality is, Matos was somebody that they were reluctant to bring up, I think in part because they also knew that he had a 1 for 18 in him. And you didn't want to bring him up and have that be the beginning of his season because then you might not be able to get him back at the major league level, moving forward. And so they've got a lot of guys that basically are on their last chance to come up and succeed. And if they don't, then it's like, well, where do you go from there? Because it's not like these guys are top prospects in their prime anymore. They're kind of floundering prospects that you're given one last look to before you start to move on to some others, I think, in a few of these cases. So it's interesting. But no, this is not, and I'm going to continue to say it, this is not on Bob Melvin. And look, the reality is this team is on pace, and it can change fast. They could win 4 of the next 5 and be 1 under, and again, right there in the race. And we can all pretend that it's 2010 and it's a pennant race and it's great and it's dramatic. I don't personally, and that's one of my secondary questions to you at 808 KNBR. I don't personally enjoy a mediocre. I don't pretend that an 80 and 82 type team or a 79 and 83 type team, or in this case where the Giants sit right now, a 75 and 87 pace team. I don't pretend that team's really in a legitimate pennant race, even if they're a game or two out. It doesn't do it for me. It doesn't get my juices flowing. Everybody's different, but and again, I think there's a lot of this, revisionist history toward acting as if some of those teams that won none of the teams that won were this bad. None of them. Not even half as bad as this team is. And look, we don't even know that this team is bad for sure, because that's the other thing that the Farhan teams typically do. They just when you think they're just going to careen out of control, lose 90 games or more, they get on a little bit of hot streak. And they get right back close to 500, and they make you think that they could be more than that, even though they've proven time and time again that they're not. So, again, I understand why the Giants signed the players that they signed. It would have been hell to pay for Farhan Zaidi if they hadn't signed those players. So I'm not even against what they did, but the reality is Farhan Zaidi's on his – this is the last chance. This team has to win. They have to get in the postseason. They can't be a 75-win team. I mean, I'll say it. This team goes 75 and 87. You know how it ends. You know how it ends for him. I can say it without even saying it. It's not going to work. And changes. And Bob Melvin's still going to be around at that particular point in time. I think, and Bob Melvin knows that. I think he knew that when he took the job, even though I think he also wanted some semblance of consistency around him in the front office and somebody that he was familiar with and having stability, at least on paper, with the extension that Farhan Zaidi garnered at signing, at least of Bob Melvin entering the equation. Brian and Modesto's next here in the Sports Leader. Hey, Brian, 808 KNBR, got a lot of people that want to talk. What's going on tonight, Brian?
Hey, I'll be glad to drive Zaidi to the airport myself.
Well, you're going to have to get in line if this continues at the level that it is right now. But again, it looked this bad a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and then it's like, oh, well, maybe it's not that bad. And then look, well, I think it's just what this team's going to be. But go ahead, Brian. Let's hear what you have to say.
Here's what I don't understand. The Giants over the weekend got their teeth kicked in by the Yankees. Let's be honest. They got their faces caved in by the Yankees. Don't you think that they could have learned a little something about discipline at bats by watching how the Yankees just 2 down and nobody on, down up 4-3, single infield single, triple home run? I mean, just keeping innings alive and then just laying hay. I mean, this team is undisciplined at the plate. They have no players on this team. They have no hitters in this team that will deliver haymakers to the other team. No 3-run homers early in the game that punch you right in the jaw.
No, they don't. Well, they don't have haymakers. And look, the Dodgers, the Yankees have a bunch of really good hitters up and down that lineup, Brian. And it's a talent issue. And you're right, the approach hasn't been great either. And we can get into all of that, but it's a talent issue, I think, first and foremost. I mean, they don't have a Volpe, let alone a Soto or a Judge or a Stanton or a Rizzo or anybody like that. I mean, it just they don't have anybody at the level of the rest of these guys at this particular point in time. Brian, did you have a final thought?
Yeah, I really just hope that Zaidi's really feeling heat under his butt right now, because
I think he
deserves every ounce of criticism and unpleasant comments that any of us fans can throw at him. Thanks.
It's a results-oriented business. He knows it. Everybody knows it. And look, it's year 6, right? I mean, I have to count them up, right? 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. I'm going to count them. Yeah, this is year 6. It's year 6. It's one playoff year. They're adding playoff teams left and right in the major leagues. I mean, it speaks for itself. If this team wins in the 70s and misses the playoffs for 5 out of 6 years, I mean, again, it's like I don't even have to say it. It's just reality at this point. Richard, next, here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Richard.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing all right tonight. Hanging in there.
Good.
Tough night, tough week.
Yes, I agree. I would like to. I'm surrounded by Dodger fans. I just painted the side of my house today, so I hope they don't set off firecrackers and explode anywhere near the house. It looks really nice. Anyway, let's talk about Arthur in L.A. You guys up there in the Bay you don't realize you got these San Francisco Giant fans like me and Arthur down here in L.A., and we just, every time the Giants lose, it's like, oh, the natives are getting restless. But anyway, I'm the eternal optimist. That's why I call in every once in a while to give you guys a shot in the arm. I'm not worried about Duvall and the way he pitched in the 9th inning against the Yankees. I think for some reason, I don't know why, I was thinking about Hunter Strickland when he was throwing at his top for us as a closer, and Bryce Harper took him deep. And that sort of reminded me of Duvall with Juan Soto. It happens, but I still think that they could come back. And then the other thing I wanted to say to you and your listeners, Casey Schmidt will have some redemption. I know he must be feeling really lonely tonight. Same thing with Tyro and a little bit of Conforto. They're just coming back off the DL. Even Wilmer Flores, the more they play, I think we're going to start seeing some better results from them. All right.
Yeah.
So that's all I want to say.
All right, Richard. No, I appreciate it. The Giants are going to have to see results from those guys. Otherwise, this thing's going to get even more out of hand than it is right now. And the reality is, again, the whole National League is graded on a mediocre curve right now. which means you're 29-33, and you're still very much in the race because currently you don't even have to be a 500 team to get into the postseason. So, that's going to give everybody, and the Giants specifically, all of these extra opportunities to have this thing still have the potential to look somewhat successful at the end of the line here come September and October. But I'm going by injuries, sloppy play, inability to get the offense going, poor defense, I think, too often. Now, they've had some spectacular defensive stretches and some spectacular individual defenders on the field, but I just look at it's been a little bit of every possible area that hasn't been good enough for the Giants here through the first 8 weeks of the season, where I look at 6 pretty bad weeks, and injuries are part of that because they had injuries the first 6 weeks too, and then really the injuries opened the door for the young players to come in and make an impact. But when you look at it top to bottom, I've seen 6 weeks of mediocre to bad baseball. I've seen 2 weeks of pretty good baseball, but even that pretty good baseball was some historic, wild, once-in-a-lifetime stretch of comebacks that may not necessarily have been real. And so I'm a little bit on pause here as to what all of that meant, seeing what we've seen over the last week coming off of that stretch. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. We do have one line open, but a lot of people on the lines. We're just going to keep this thing rolling as long as the people want to talk here tonight. It's Sports Phone KNBR. It's JD, John Dickinson here on the Sports Leader, and we get next to Loverboy in Tracy. Hey, Loverboy.
Hey there. Good to be on. I got a couple points real quick. I think you got to blame the team at this point. Some of the mistakes that have been made, the lethargic kind of energy. They kind of remind me of the Warriors last season. They're kind of like the little engine that could. And then right when it seems like we turn things around, and okay, we can do this, then they make a bunch of stupid mistakes or just don't bring it, and the wheels fall off. So all these people that are trying to like find a reason to go against Farhan. Like, believe me, I'm not a big Farhan fan, but I mean, what do these guys want? He's got Bailey, he's got Harrison. He went out, got Blake Snell, got Matt Chapman. He spent some money on the free agents. I mean, I get they might not like him for past stuff, but it's like, what else do you want the guy to do? I mean, at this point, you got to look at the team and be mad at some of the players that aren't bringing it. That's my opinion.
No doubt. And look, he tried, and I give him credit for trying, and I was on board. I'll be the first one to admit, I was even on board with giving him another year. Now, I think the extension was a little bit weird, but understandable given the fact that Bob Melvin was coming over and the familiarity that Bob had with Farhan with the time that both were with the A's. And I think it made Bob more comfortable to join the Giants, not having Farhan basically being in a lame duck season contractually. So I understand why the time was added, even though you can look at the results, because this is a results-oriented business, and anybody that wants to question whether that extension should have been garnered, I think is absolutely fair. But that being said, I was all for giving Farhan a shot with Bob Melvin, and let's see how it shakes out. Reality, though, again, and you can put it on the players, Loverboy, and you should. I mean, Soler hasn't worked out. Snell hasn't worked out. Chapman, the first a month after the first couple of games, wasn't working out. He's been better the last month. Like, they're up and down the lineup. Conforto, I think, up and down. Didn't really work out last year. He was hot at the beginning. Now he's hurt. If it doesn't work out, Farhan's going to be held accountable for it not working out. But I do think, in fairness, you have to put the onus on players that were brought in to perform that haven't performed. That's absolutely part of the equation, Loverboy.
No, I agree with it, JD. I like your points, and I just had to call in. And we got to stop meeting like this, because the other day I was in and out line for a milkshake, and now tonight I'm sitting alone in my car in a dark area eating Taco Bell. So it's just not good.
Man, you got some old school JD habits. Actually, that's sometimes you wonder what I'm doing sometimes on some of those late nights after Warriors games. It's like sometimes you just kind of end up there because you're a little too wound up to go home, and a lot of times you haven't eaten anything for a few hours. Thanks, my man.
Well, all right, man. I'll talk to you.
Appreciate it. 808 KNBR. Loverboy and Tracy, his line open, 415-808-5627 as the Giants lose again. It's 6 in a row. It's 29-33. Are you up for it? Are you up for 6 under, and then you're even, and then you're 3 under, and then you're 1 over, and then you're 4 under, and then you're 2 under, and then you're 5 under, and then you're 1 under, and it looks good, and you're 2 back of the wild card, and you're 2 back of the wild. Are you really down to pretend that it's a legitimate pennant race at that point? Because it's going to be such a roller coaster with so much mediocrity over the next couple of months that, again, it may very well end up where they're in a race. Like, they might actually be. I mean, if you're into June 4th pennant races, they're in a race right now. It's hard for me to do it at 29-33. It's hard for me to do it at 29-27. For that matter, although things did look completely different going back a week ago tonight as they were riding high off of the bullpen game and the 1-0 win against the Phillies, and things looked like they were headed in a different direction. Jerry in San Ramon here on eSports Leader. Hey, Jerry.
Hey, JD. Just, going back, when we had the regime change, with Sabian and Bobby Evans and Bochy retiring and whatnot, they wanted a change, and they got a change, and it has been not successful. And yet Sabian's working for the Yankees, Bochy's won a title, and I don't know what Bobby Evans is doing, but he still has some of his players in the system, I believe. But it's basically an organizational failure from the top on down. And the old scenario where we pitching and defense, timely additions at the deadline, and developing our players in the minor leagues were the key to those 3 championships, and a little bit of luck going with it, because the Giants obviously were not always the best team in those playoffs, but they managed to get the job done. So the big thing for me is seeing the players come up from the minor leagues. They seem to be fundamentally flawed. We don't have a shortstop that can catch a ball right now. We don't have people that cover the bases. We're last in stolen bases. We don't move runners along. It's just fundamentals are just not there, JD, and I blame that on the total organization.
Yeah, some of the players that have come up, I think, have shown why the Giants have been reluctant to bring them up, despite the fact that the fan base and even some in the media have been calling for them to come up, right? Hey, we want to see these guys. And the Giants are like, yeah, we'll see. We've signed some veterans. They're going to get the first crack at this thing. And then the veterans struggle, and everybody's like, well, can we see him now? Can we see him now? And then it doesn't happen until there's some injuries that force the hand of the front office. And then you've seen all of it, right? You've seen some talent, and that led to this infusion, but you've also seen some mistakes and some sloppiness and some fundamentals and all of those things you mentioned that I think do show exactly why – maybe they were reluctant to bring them up a little bit earlier. But to your point, yeah, if they were farther along or more complete players, it wouldn't look as bad when it has looked bad as it did at times tonight, and it has at times even during the winning streak. There were still some sloppy plays. But the reality is, again, it comes down to the drafting and development hasn't been there. And look, here's the thing, and thank you for the call. Appreciate it. We'll keep it moving. Jerry in San Ramon, thank you. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. It has been an organizational failure. Here's the thing, though, going back to moving on from Sabian and Evans and Bochy and all of that. It's undeniable going back that it did get stale. It's undeniable that the Giants did hang on to the guys that helped them win titles for too long. And everybody was all for it because it was feel good and positive vibes. But it absolutely got stale to the point where I can understand where the organization wanted to maybe change things up. And that it was, or at least it felt in that moment like it was time. But Brian Sabian built 2 different championship contenders over a couple of decades. I mean, you go back to, Brian Sabean he comes in, he trades Matt freaking Williams, and he gets Jeff Kent, and he gets Jose Vizcaino, and he gets Julian Tavares, and that team goes from 96 losses to a division championship. They add JT Snow and Kent, and Bill Miller comes up, and that was a 6-year run, really an 8-year run. But the 6-year run from 97 to 02 with Dusty Baker as the manager and Barry Bonds as the premier player, they got to the one World Series and they had some playoff heartbreakers. But he built 2 different championship contenders. They didn't win the first one. And then they were pretty good with Felipe Alou as the skipper after Kent left. And Bonds still had a couple of years of big-time carrier in him in 03 and 04. And they didn't make the playoffs every one of those years, but that team was winning in the upper 80s minimum every one of those years. And you only had 4 teams get in. So you could win 90 and not get in. You could win 88 and not get in. You win 88 now, you almost guaranteed to be the second wild card. But Sabean built that team with veterans and trades and cobbled together and finding pitching and all this hitting. And he built that. And then they tore it down to the studs and weren't good for about 4 years, moved on from Barry Bonds, and while all that was going on, they were draft and develop. Matt Cain, Tim Lincecum, Madison Bumgarner, Pablo Sandoval, Sergio Romo, Brian Wilson, Brandon Belt later, Brandon Crawford later. And then they peppered it in with veterans and all this. He did it 2 different ways, is my point. And so, you can make the case that it was stale and time to move on and all of that. But that's some major shoes to have to fill, I think, without a doubt. I think we shouldn't forget how talented and how quality the Brian Sabean, Bobby Evans, Brian Sabean, Dusty Baker, Felipe Alou, Bruce Bochy era was. And that's why I can't. And we'll get back to the phones here coming up in just a second. That's why I can't get into this team being 4 under and then 2 over and then 6 under and then 1 over and then 3 under. I can't do that because I know what mediocrity looks like because I watched 8 freaking teams at the end of the 90s growing up and the beginning of the 2000s that were all this feels like a 2005 team. This feels like a 2006 team. This feels like a 2007 team. This feels like a 2008 team. This does not feel like a 2010, 12, or 14 team. It just doesn't. Now, maybe you get in and anything can happen and you got Webb and Snell and it looks a hell of a lot different. There's always teams every single year that look completely lost and get hot and get on a run, but it's got to come from within. I don't think there's some magic potion or magic player out there that's going to fix this thing for the Giants, at least in 2024. All right, rant over. Bill and Campbell, back to the phones we go. 808 KNBR, you're on the Sports Leader. Hey, Bill.
John, I'm calling because I'm worried about your sanity, okay? First, you had to put up with the Warriors. This is so similar.
The Warriors won 40.
Those post games
how many
you
games
had
the Warriors win? The Warriors won 46 games, Bill. At the
end, they pulled it out. Right, they put it together at the end, but they were so mediocre back and forth for the first half and maybe even 2/3 of the season. And I would hear your frustration, and people would be calling in for Kuminga and Moody, and you'd have to fight them off. And it's the same thing with these young guys now. But here's my solution. Last night I cracked up when you said, this is just a gluttony of mediocrity. You reminded me of a Jim Harbaugh quote. So when he won 12 with San Diego and then came here and Stanford hired him, I'll never forget when the press interviewed him and they said, what are you going to do to change this situation here with a 2-win team? And he kind of hesitated and he smiled and gave that answer like Harbaugh likes to give. We are going to play with a passion unknown to mankind.
I remember
That's how he was going to turn it around. So I think you got to go to Bob Melvin and tell Bob, look, you got to go in to that clubhouse and tell him we are going to play from here on out with a passion unknown to mankind.
Well, I think he would buy that, Bill, coming off of tonight. If you heard or saw what he had to say in his office post game down in Phoenix tonight, he was not happy with the at bats, the sloppiness, the energy, the fight, the competitive spirit of his team tonight. And it's one thing to lose, but to look defeated and look deflated and look disengaged. I think, frankly, tonight, especially early. That's not a good sign, and that's something where, a manager does have to step in, especially more of an old-school style manager like Bob Melvin is. So I'm interested to see how they come out tomorrow, how they finish off the rest of this week with the 3-game series against the defending champion Rangers, who've been a little bit underwhelming to this point. But, yeah, it's got to come from within. I'll say this about those Niners, though, Bill. Jim Harbaugh inherited a lot of talent, especially on the defensive end. That team was
I was talking about Stanford first.
Okay. No, you're right about that.
When he came, they only won 2 games, and they asked him, how are you going to change this program around? And his answer was, we are going to play with a passion unknown to mankind.
Well, he said the same thing with the Niners, too. You know what, Bill? It's funny. That's part. He probably said it down in L.A., within the last couple of months when he took the Chargers job. He said it both places, and he did it both places. And you're right, Stanford was about as bad as it could be before Jim Harbaugh got there, and they did turn into a legitimate national powerhouse. So, yeah, sometimes it can be that. Coming up with guys like Andrew Luck also doesn't hurt, Bill. That doesn't hurt. and Christian McCaffrey and guys like that'll also help. Thanks for the call, Bill.
Now without him, are they?
No doubt. All right, 808 KNBR, Ralph, Steve, and Hank. We are overdue as we've gone the full first hour here, commercial free. So Ralph, Steve, and Hank, quick timeout, and then I'm coming to you. We do have a line open at 415-808-5627. So we'll pause here. Giants lose to the D-backs 8-5. The final on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Sports Phone KNBR keeps rolling live from the KNBR Casino Matrix Progressive Jackpot Studios. Casino Matrix Progressive Jackpots are here. Where are you? Just drop in. Please play responsibly. 1-800-GAMBLER.
That was a terrible game by us today, especially the early portion of the game. When you're going through losing streaks, at least you fight. For the most part, we have. That was an awful game. We made it interesting at the end, but didn't play well. Made Harry get multiple outs. We had a starter on the ropes every inning. Couldn't cash in. It's a bad game and a bad stretch by us.
All right, Bob Melvin, straight and to the point. Awful game. Yeah, they let Kyle Harrison down. Extra outs, balls off the glove. Just sloppy, slow-footed type game. Not making a pitcher pay when you're getting ahead in the count. Some awful at-bats early with runners on. And no fight. So Bob Melvin calling his team out post-game down at Chase Field in Arizona as the Giants lose 8-5. Really wasn't that close. Yastrzemski, the cosmetic 3-run homer. And I'll be honest, the 3-run homer, and let's bring in Jacob Violante. We'll get back to the phones here in just a second. The 3-run homer almost makes you more mad at the end of the night because it really goes to, and I know everything could play out differently, but it to me it ticks you off more because if you're able to hold Arizona down to 4-2, you felt like you had a chance to steal the game, and then Yaz does that, and it ends up being cosmetically close, I guess. But in reality, and I asked you right before the start of the show about what you said last night about, you can lose close, you can lose in a blowout. I said to you, Jacob, I said, well, what's tonight? And you're like, oh, man, this was a blowout. Like, this was an 8-2 game, not an 8-5 game. And I'm with you, my friend.
Listen, I love the swing of the bat, but it was too little too late. And like I told you, it wasn't his fault. He was pinch hitting. First Giants pinch hit of the year. And probably the most egregious thing of all is that it made it so close where now this Paul Sewald character had to come in to jump around. And I had to hear that over the break in the in the radio broadcast. And I was like, come on, man, what are we doing? And it made me think about Brian Wilson. It made me get more nostalgic. And now seeing how far we are from those days, And, yeah, I would have easily taken the 6-run ass-kicking we were getting. And then Yaz makes it close, he pulls me back in, sort of, but I was already halfway out the door. And, of course, they don't get it done.
Isn't that indicative of really what this team has been these last couple of seasons and in the early part of this year? It's like you have high hopes at the beginning. They go out, they're able to sign some players on what appear to be decent contracts with the shorter terms and not maybe the guys that were at the top of the list, but some second tier type guys to come in, and you're thinking, hey, this team was a couple of within 4 or 5 games of a playoff spot last year and that final wild card spot last year. So you can just talk yourself into, well, this team isn't going to be like last year's team. Like, this team has to be better, right? And then they get off to a brutal start after winning 2 of the first 3. They go to Arizona, they get swept. They kind of linger around 500, and then they end up a month and a half into the season 6 under. And you're thinking, wow, this team's just they don't have it. The injuries are piling up. It's just not a good team. And then right when you're like going to totally lose hope, it's like, oh, wow, 10-12, 2 over. The kids. Everybody loves the young guys. They got to love the kids, all this stuff. And then right when you think it's going back the other way, they just dip right back out. And again, they suck you back in. You nailed it. They suck you back in. But I'm not doing it. I'm not getting sucked back in. I'm not getting sucked back in for 83 and 79. I'm not. And look, I'll be there at the end of the line if it happens. I'm going to be doing a lot of these post-game sports phone shows. So we're going to talk about each and every game as it comes. And there's going to be good nights, and there's going to be bad nights, and there's going to be nights. I'm just telling you, this team's going to look like they're in the race and mathematically be in the race all season. As bad as it looks right now, they're going to be. You could be 8 under and probably 4 out, and feeling like you're in the race. And all that's going to do, Jacob, is lead right back to that path of sucking you right back in, because you're gonna think, well, if they get in, and then Webb, and then Snell, and the Dodgers lose in the playoffs, and the Phillies got beat by Arizona, who was kind of like the Giants this year, not a great team. And then you talk yourself all into it, and then it ends up with in all likelihood, it ends up with coming up just a little bit short. And then you look up at the end of it, and it won't be that they came up a little bit short. It'll be that they were freaking mediocre all year.
Good for you, JD, for living above the influence of the Giants, man. I'm hooked. They got me hook, line, and sinker. I'm like Heath Ledger, man. I can't quit them. You know what I mean? Like in that movie with Jake Gyllenhaal. I'm fully invested on the Giants. They've got me for life. And, dude, I need them. I need more. I need more from them. And I think every Giants fan feels that way right now.
I'm not saying you give up on them. Like, I'm not saying you don't be a fan. But it's just understand that this, they may get you to a point where it's October and they're playing an extra few games. At that point, it becomes compelling. All I'm saying is the process of the next 4 months probably not going to be all that compelling. And I think we've seen that. And that's the part that frustrates me. If there's going to be that in game, I want 2010 and 2012 and 2014, there were some frustrating times, but it was basically day in, day out compelling. The 2010 team was playing close games almost every freaking night. They were getting their heart broken, losing in the last inning. The whole first half of the year, they were getting walked off on and couldn't score any runs and all these different things. But it was like must listen and must watch because they were just playing all these crazy bonkers games. And then they started, and they would win their share too. But it just, I don't know. It just, that felt much higher level to the eye test than what we're watching at this point. So I think I get angry when I see comparisons to the two. I think that's what triggers me, basically, is this is not that. It may end up in a similar point because of the extra teams that make the playoffs and the screwy format now that's in play. But this team is not that. And I can't do the song and dance for the next 4 months. I cannot pretend for the next 4 months like this is a legitimate pennant race. I'm not going to do it until they prove that they can be an 85 to 90 win team. If they show that they can do that, then maybe I'll start to buy in at that particular point. Ralph and Napa next on the Sports Leader. Hey, Ralph.
Hey there. Thanks for taking my call. Yeah, everyone's upset. Everyone is saying a lot of the same things. I just listened to another wretched Giants game, and as a fan, I'm not happy either. But I guess Bob Melvin's comments, when the team is down and sort of not putting their all into it, I have a problem with that. My other thought is the team at the beginning of the year looked pretty good. Farhan, I think, did the best he could. I think Bob Melvin's doing the best that he can. And you said it a couple times, injuries. I forget the young man's name that played center field. He was just
Jung-Hoo Lee.
Yeah, he was a spark in the beginning of the season. He's gone. I don't know all the names of all the other players because I can't remember them.
They don't have Wade right now. I mean, Lamont Wade Jr. is their best hitter. Jung-Hoo Lee was going to be their everyday leadoff hitter and center fielder. Austin Slater wasn't performing, but he's been on the concussion injured list for a while. He's doing a rehab assignment now. Luciano, despite the defensive issues that he had, he looked like a young player that had come up and could hit a little bit. Snell, obviously, I mean, you look at Nick Ahmed, who was the starting shortstop. I mean, injuries are part of it. There's no question. But you have to plan for injuries, and I think you have to have enough depth to get, especially if you're not a high-end talented team, you have to plan your roster to have enough depth to be able to withstand it, and that's being tested right now.
Well, it certainly is, and you're
in
exactly
a big way.
Right. You're exactly right, but I still think that the team as it was set out in the beginning of the season looked pretty good. They might not be a World Series winner, but they were all, experienced baseball players that knew what they were doing. And I think that's what it takes, consistency. The players have to learn each other and how they play, how they react in different situations. Over a whole season, they learn and they get better. when people from the lower levels are coming up. Sure, they do great in the beginning, but they'll figure out their holes in their swings, and the pitchers will have to readjust. A lot of the fielding stuff is they're just these guys. Maybe they didn't think they were going to come up this year, that so-and-so was going to play this second base or whatever the position was. All of a sudden they're in the major leagues. They got to prove themselves, and they're freaked out. They make an error once in a while, which is probably normal. So, it's sort of what it is, and you have to follow the game because you love it, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. And you can't say, well, I won't take a mediocre team or I won't follow this team because this and this and this. Well, sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad, like everything else.
Nope, you're right about that, Ralph. And look, I'm going to be following them. I just can't get hooked into the whole it's a pennant race with a team that really can do something until they.
Well, we don't know that yet.
Otherwise,
but, let it play out. Probably not. Maybe some of the injured people will come back, but I'm not in it just to see them win a pennant or get in the World Series again. The three series were a blessing. They were something that may not ever happen again. Everything worked out perfectly.
No question, and you're 100% correct about that, and we will let it play out. And thank you for the call, Ralph. I appreciate it. I mean, there are a lot of games to go. We've seen how quickly things can flip potentially back the other way. I would disagree with Ralph in that the team looked good at the beginning. I don't think the team that they planned to have looked great at the beginning. Chapman was ice cold, and Soler still hasn't come around. Conforto was hitting, but then he got hurt. Some of the players that had been big-time contributors at different times, Estrada, Yastrzemski, they were not performing at the level. Wilmer Flores not performing at the level even that they had the last couple of years. I think that was part of it. I think part of it was get the production that the Giants have gotten from the guys that have been here the last few years, some of the veterans, get that similar production, plus the Chapmans and the Solers and the Jung-Hoo Lees and those players, plus maybe an infusion of some of the young guys if there are injuries, and that could be a team that could potentially do something. I actually saw the vision. I'm not even disagreeing with the effort was right, given the reality of where the farm system is and the lack of, potential star players coming up to play at an extremely high level. Like I think in many ways Farhan did the best he can, but he also put himself in this position, and it's results oriented. And if it doesn't get better, we know how it ends. But no, I think the young guys playing by necessity is what flipped it. It was the young guys playing in place of some of the players that had gone down, and they came up and were hot in addition to Chapman turning it around. And Lamont Wade Jr. has just been great, all season in terms of on base and hitting the ball hard. I mean, he's their best hitter. And so the young guys that were hot have cooled, and they lost Lamont Wade. I know there have been a couple of people on the Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line call out the shortstop position. The shortstop position has defensively killed the Giants this year. And Ahmed was the best option defensively. He had some issues with some of his throws, but they've hit, with Wisely at different points in Luciano. But there's no doubt, shortstop can't be a position where you're playing somebody that's not really a shortstop for very long. Eventually, it's always going to bite you, and we've seen it a little bit with Wisely. We've seen it with Luciano. We saw it with Fitzgerald when he got some run there early in the season. He had a game where he had an error that was costly. We've just seen it top to bottom. One more, and then we'll break. We got some spots to make up. Steve in Albany is next here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Steve. Appreciate you.
Hi, JD. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm fired up. I'm passionate. There's a lot of games to go. Obviously, this thing can turn, but it's just I'm just seeing a lot more mediocrity with that 1-2 week blip, unfortunately, that made everybody maybe get their hopes up, at least until further notice.
Agreed. I think we have a number of choices for LVP tonight, the least valuable player. So here's my thing. We know that we don't score early. we get behind the 8 ball, and we have to fight to come back. So you would think that the players would show more discipline at the plate, try different approaches. But no, first 3 innings is where they lost the game for me. First 3 innings of plate appearances. We have Ramos get on, and then Estrada, who hasn't played in 2 weeks, comes up, doesn't bunt, doesn't hit to the right side, goes to 3-1, and then swings at 2 pitches that are over his head. Next player comes up, Bailey, hits into a double play. Next inning, first and second to lead off, Soler with his foot in the bucket again, hits an infield pop-up. Then the next 2 guys go out weekly. Now we're at 50 pitches in 2 innings, and we haven't scored yet. Third inning, Ramos gets on again. Estrada, who hadn't learned anything from the first at-bat, swings at the first pitch and pops up to the infield. Then Bailey hits into a double play. So we have all these guys on base. Nobody gets advanced. Nobody goes to the right side. Nobody bunts. Nobody steals. And we're left with 3 innings with all these opportunities, and nothing happens. And then they come back and score 3 runs, and the game's basically over. So I don't know. I know the game has changed, but sometimes you have to execute the fundamentals and go for 1 run instead of trying to play for the big inning, because most of the time they don't get it. So anyway, that's why I'm so frustrated. It's just boring baseball.
Gone are the days where it's leadoff walk, bunt the guy to second, that kind of thing. But you can hit the other way and try to advance that way. You can maybe hit and run. I know that has been a cry from a lot of Giants fans, especially more seasoned Giants fans who have followed Bob Melvin throughout his managerial career, and even back with the Diamondbacks and the Mariners, going way, way back. He was the type of manager that would play more of the small ball. I mean, he was a Roger Craig disciple. Going way back. So he is somebody that would play more small ball and bunt when those things were, early on. But that's just not the game anymore with the analytics. But that doesn't mean that you can't look to advance, by putting the ball in play in certain places and hit a sacrifice fly when you got to run around third with less than 2 outs and that kind of a thing, and have more quality grinding type at bats when you're ahead in the count and with runners in scoring position, which has just been a dreadful part of this Giants team. 2 for 10 tonight, but the one big hit was when they were down 8-2 by Yastrzemski. So really good call. Really appreciate you checking in, Steve, here on a Tuesday night. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Let's go ahead and take another break. We'll get to some text messages, and still time to sneak in some more phone calls if you'd like, as the Giants lose to the Diamondbacks 8-5 right here in KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Talk Nation. Dial the digits and dive in. 415-808-KNBR. Sports Phone KNBR continues right here and on the all-new KNBR app.
2-2. Yastrzemski drives one deep to right field. It is gone into the Giants bullpen. Mike Yastrzemski hits a 3-run homer, his 6th of the year, and a 2-out rally for the Giants. Back-to-back walks, and then make them pay for the walks. The home run from Yastrzemski. It's 8-5 Arizona.
First pinch hit homer of the year for the Giants. Yaz, when they're down 6, to make it a 3-run game. Dave Fleming on the call here, KNBR The Sports Leader. At that point, 5 hits, 6 walks, a couple of hit batters, and they were 1 for 9 with runners in scoring position before that home run. Elliot Ramos would strike out to end the inning. And, the Yaz home run almost makes you more mad, given the way everything played out. With the 4-run 7th inning that Luke Jackson gave up, he had nothing. Blaze Alexander, leadoff single. Then Alexander to second on a bunt. Wisely never moved to cover second on the bunt. And then a walk to Marte, second and third at that point. And then the jam shot single, 5-2. Gurriel doubles, 7-2. Hanging slider there. And Grichuk singles in another run, 8-2 off the glove of Wisely. 4 hits for Arizona off Giant fielders' gloves. You add all that up with the real poor plate appearances early in the game, and it's an 8-5 loss. 6 in a row for the Giants. They're 4 under 500, and they'll try to salvage the finale in the desert tomorrow, where they've lost 7 straight games head-to-head to the Diamondbacks at Chase Field. 808 KNBR, back to the phones. Horace in Oakland is next. Hey, Horace.
Hey, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing well tonight. How are you?
Great. Doing pretty good here. Hey, getting back to the gentleman that was talking, I think he was from Albany, was saying the small hitting, the small ball, the billy ball type of baseball, moving the batter over. I came up in the era with Craig and Fox and even with Billy Martin here over in North Oakland, over in Shattuck. Bushrod field was dedicated to Billy Martin, and he was that type of baseball wins games. You cannot put these type of players that up in these situations to swing away and think they're going to produce. You got pitchers out there that are great caliber today, and these are not proven batters to put up in that. They need the fundamentals of the bunt, the sacrifice to move the batter over, sack steal, fake bunt, steal, just all kind of from Braves up here with the Berkeley High, with Ricky Henderson. You see the type of baseball that we're used to playing. This guy has made decisions that I was general manager. I would have probably fired him. You get a lead on batter, 2 batters, you got bases loaded with 1 out. You got to score a run. If your man cannot just hit a deep fly ball out, you got a problem. There's so many situations.
Gospel, Horace. You're and again, it's a different game now in terms of the bunting and things like that, hit and run, those things, but hitting behind the runner, hitting the sacrifice fly, those things very much are still in play and need to be more a part of the game, especially for a team that doesn't have a bunch of boppers that are going to hit the ball out of the ballpark left and right. Now, I think the Giants thought they had some guys that were going to be hitting the ball out of the ballpark a little bit more, to where every runner in scoring position wasn't going to be so important, but it hasn't been the case. A lot of these guys have underperformed, and when you don't have the power, that's where all the little things come in. You have to play clean baseball to win, and the Giants haven't really, other than the 2 weeks when they got hot and won 10 out of 12, they haven't done either consistently enough to be even a 500 team, let alone a team that could really be solidifying themselves as a top flight contender. Good phone call, Horace. Did you have one more final point?
Yeah, getting back with still those type of bunt. This guy hits the leadoff. You got two leadoff batters with Ben, and a couple of nights ago he had a base hit. Then he had a guy came up and he if he would have just bunted him over second, but then he hit it to a force out at second. Then the other guy goes up behind him, smashes a double, and that man would have been on third base with one out. Just simple things like that at the beginning of a game. If you got to play that small ball, these players are not proven to Jack Clark's, the Will Clark's, the Barry Bonds. They're not proven to do stuff like Matt Williams is, to do stuff to have them swing away. You got to put a person where they're at. You got to put with their level where they're at. And, a lot of these players, like Flores and all this, they can bomb the ball out, but they're striking out high balls. They're not taking the pitches, balls. But the referees are not very friendly to the Giants this year. I hate it real badly because it's real bad. These umps are ugly for the Giants. I'm so serious. I'm sorry to say that, umps, but you have been so hard on the Giants. Bad calls.
Thanks, Horace.
But
appreciate
thank
you, my man. Have a good night. Be safe. We'll talk soon. Horace in Oakland checking in here. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. Let's go ahead and pause here again, and I promise we'll clean up some text messages. Appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch as well tonight. A hearty 2 hours here as we get you back up until the midnight replay, but we'll go ahead and take another quick timeout. Still time for another call or two, 808 KNBR, as the Giants lose 8-5, and you heard it all right here on 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
phone KNBR keeps rolling live from the KNBR Casino Matrix Progressive Jackpot Studios. Casino Matrix Progressive Jackpots are here. Where are you? Just drop in. Please play responsibly. 1-800-GAMBLER.
Paul Sewald, the closer, ready with the two-strike pitch. Conforto takes strike three call. Fastball right in there. So the Giants got the leadoff runner on. They did that 7 times in this game. But they only scored 2 of those leadoff runners, and the Giants have lost for the 6th consecutive time. The final score tonight, Diamondbacks 8 and the Giants 5.
Everything. You know, the at-bat, we have guy on the ropes every inning and can't cash in but a couple of runs. It's just a bad game.
Was that a message that was relayed to the team?
I'm not going to talk about what I say to anybody.
Expect them to bounce it back?
Yeah, tomorrow we better.
Bob Melvin. I don't remember Bob Melvin being that upset at any point when he was managing the A's. And I heard a lot of his press conferences and watched a lot of their games and even covered a bunch of them the first handful of years. And I don't ever recall Bo Mel being that upset about a team and the way that they were playing. No magic stick for Michael Conforto tonight as he takes a called third to end the night. And, the failures with the leadoff hitters and some favorable counts tonight. Huge part of the story for the Giants as they lose 8-5. It's 6 in a row in the loss column. 808 KNBR, we got about 8 minutes or so here before we call it a night. We get you up to the midnight replay here on the Sports Leader. And the Giants back at it tomorrow, Game 3 of the 3-game series, as they will look to avoid the sweep. And it'll be Jordan Hicks back on the mound for San Francisco. Jordan Hicks against Jordan Montgomery at 12:40. Of course, you can hear it right here on KNBR, the Sports Leader. 7 to 9 innings with the leadoff hitter. Not good. Not good. And the Giants also getting hurt by the bottom of the order by their opponents. And unfortunately, the offense right now for San Francisco, it looks like it did the first 6 weeks of the season. Injuries set the whole thing back, no doubt, but some of the guys who had been hot are cooling off, and they did Kyle Harrison no favors tonight. The defense completely let him down. Blaze Alexander come through with a couple of big hits, and the Giants try to get off the schneid again now here at 4 under. And I was talking to Jacob Violante during the break. They're not going to be out of it. I don't see how this team is going to be bad enough to be out of it, but they're going to do the thing that they've done, I think, to this point in the season where it looks really bad, and then they get hot, and you kind of have hope, and then they flatten out. And, 760 on the Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line. If this continues, J.D. Farhan is gone, but been behind the guy, but the act of great runs followed by protracted pitfalls is just tired at this point. I'm over it. I think a lot of Giants fans are over it. And I don't think the masses are going to be excited about a pennant race for a team that's winning anywhere between 78 and 82 games. It doesn't mean you can't get in and do damage, because we've seen teams do it over the last couple of years. Hell, the 6th seed has made it to the last 2 World Series from the National League. The Phillies were the last team in a couple of years ago. They got to the World Series, and the Diamondbacks last year were the last team in, and they got all the way to the World Series. So, if anything, in the NL, it's been the norm here since they added that extra wild card in the full 3-game series, the wild card series now, best of 3 series, before the old division series. 408 with an interesting one. JD, if we're being honest, could the Giants even realistically sell if they wanted to come July? I think that's a great point. And I know I think you're coming at it from the angle of, who would the Giants have that would be desirable if they chose to sell? I do think they could have some veteran players that you wouldn't get a lot for them, but I do think they could sell or do swaps of maybe you take somebody back that has underwhelmed and you're trading your underwhelming guy to another team for a run. And again, we're also a little bit early to totally know who would be wanted, who would be valuable. But I just don't see how they're going to be far enough out of it. I mean, even the Mets right now are 9 under, and they're only 4 out. The Mets right now are only 4 out, and they've been awful, worse than the Giants at this point. And, we saw how it all shook out when those two teams played against each other over the last couple of weeks. So get ready to ride that wave of you're 4 under, and then you win 3 of 4, and then you lose 2 of 3, and then you win 4 in a row, and then you lose 4 of 6. And I just feel like this team's going to be anywhere between 4 over and like 6 under, for the entirety of this season. And it's just going to be a frustrating, kind of drab watch. I think there was some hope that maybe they were getting hot and they could flip the momentum and they could ride that by being able to, the thing that's really wrecked them has been all of the blown leads. They, had some big-time comebacks, but they blew as many leads as they had comebacks. And so they really didn't take full advantage of it, even though they were able to get on that 10-2 and that hot stretch. A couple of more text messages. Let's get one more call in, though. Satchel Paige on the Sports Leader. I'm honored. I'm honored, Satchel.
Oh, thank you, pal. And this is what I want to say is that the mentality of today's pitchers, you have to have the mentality of a shutdown. It's over, right? So everything has to be just down to the count. I mean, there's no messing around, and no one has the mentality like they used to. And that's what I'm a little upset about tonight.
Appreciate it. All right, thanks, Satchel Paige. A couple of people in the YouTube chat, Gut Thinker, LMAO, JD doesn't know how to celebrate if you don't win at all. No, it's not that. It's just that this is mediocrity. Don't tell me 29-33 is a pennant race. That's all I'm saying. That's my point. It has nothing to do with win 90 games and get to the playoffs and lose. That's a team. There's going to be 8 to 10 teams that are probably going to win anywhere between 88 plus. You can celebrate those teams. If that's what this team was tracking to be, we'd be having a completely different conversation. Rick chiming in on the YouTube chat. It's who gets hot at the end also. Dodgers and Yankees choked last year. This year they both look for real. Yeah, they both do, but we'll see. Again, it doesn't mean you can't do damage if you get in, which is the allure of getting in. Like, I totally get that. I just don't think this is compelling on a day-in, day-out basis, the way that they're playing with the record that they have. That's the issue that I have. That's the issue. A couple of more on the text line here before we call it a night. But I do think the Giants are not going to be in a position to sell. 408, JD, why don't you tell the callers you can't make chicken salad out of chicken bleep? These guys stink. I don't want to hear any more about how Alex Cobb and Robbie Ray are going to come back and ride in on a white horse and save the day. As soon as everybody else like Wade gets off the IL, you play the hand you're dealt with. I'm not talking about Alex Cobb and Robbie Ray coming back to save the day. Like, not when Blake Snell, the guy you paid the big money to, who's won a couple of Cy Youngs, has been to this point a complete and utter disaster. Like, this season was never going to hinge on Robbie Ray and Alex Cobb. Not if Blake Snell was going to pitch as poorly as he's pitched to this point in the season. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting, and we'll see how it all shakes out. But again, I mean, this team looked like they were in big trouble a couple of weeks ago, and then they get on a hot streak. So anything is possible. All right, that'll do it For Jacob Violante, for everybody, Overnight Dave, everybody in our San Francisco studios, I'm JD. We're back Friday night following the Giants and the Rangers. Keep it locked right here, KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.